Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Wallace. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Counter-Extremism Project. I want to thank you all for coming today to announce the launch of the Counter-Extremism Project. With me today are two great friends and great public servants, Fran Townsend, the former Homeland Security Advisor for President Bush, and Senator Lieberman, who really needs no introduction. So it's my privilege and honor to be up here with two great friends and true great public servants. I also want to acknowledge my good friend Farah Pandit, who served for many years, although I don't want to date you, Farah, by doing that, under two administrations and in the State Department. She's also available to talk after this press conference for any availability. Sure, please do. Thank you. So obviously by our title, the focus of our group is extremism. And extremism has been around for a long time, notwithstanding the incredible burgeoning press that we've seen in front of us today. But what extremists have done better, I think, than those that oppose them is harnessing the financial techniques, both illicit and legitimate, and the ideological narrative mass communication techniques of social media and the like to build and grow, culminating in what we see today in the outbursts of extremism around the world, including ISIS, which we're seeing right now. And we've been working for about a year to try to figure out a way where the private sector can play an important role in countering this burst of extremism around the world. And that's what we're launching today. To the extent that we can harness the tools and lessons of the many groups that have come before us, starting with the anti-apartheid movement, even the Soviet Jewry movement, the Darfur movement, and our own group that I've worked on, United Against Nuclear Iran, we feel that we can harness many of the techniques that we could have used to use economic power and pressure to limit the ability of extremists to fund their activities. And there's very sophisticated messaging and techniques. We've all horribly seen these brutal videos by ISIS and communications by a variety of other different extremist groups. Clearly they are sending in messages and communication to vulnerable at-risk communities around the world. And it's important for us to understand that messaging, and it's important to fight that narrative and counter that narrative so our ideas, our ideology prevails over their ideology. We've also been successful, and we already see it happening during the UNGA here in New York, that there will be discussion about laws, policies, and regulations that can be implemented across jurisdictions that can be used to counter the growth of extremism. We're here in New York. I don't think anybody can forget, obviously, how important this city is in the fight against counter-extremism. Just last night or this morning, ISIS announced that it was calling on its followers to attack American and French citizens who were fighting and bring terror attacks. This city knows all too well about that. So really, our launch here today, we're very fortunate that we have a great press corps, a great team here to announce this new project. The Counter-Extremism Project is a 501c3 not-for-profit group following the tradition of many of its predecessors. And through the coming weeks, we'll have a lot of announcements, I think, talking about the work that we will do, where we'll identify individual companies, sponsors, the financial architecture, if you will, of extremist groups and those that fund, support them, and the architecture of their narrative, of the things they're doing to recruit their supporters around the world. And to the extent that you can look at the support of an extremist organization as an onion, we will hopefully try to peel that onion, whether it be financial support, ideological support, recruitment support, and do it progressively and over time to reveal what we think is the rotten core of a bad ideology. We'll obviously take a lot of questions, but I want to introduce first my friend Fran Townsend, who will, with her incredible experience, she was the original Counter-Extremism Project as the Homeland Security Advisor for President Bush, and we're benefiting from her expertise.
Thank you, Mark, and it's a privilege to be with you, Senator Lieberman. I must say, you know, one of the things that brings this group together is we all have served in public life. We've all had the experience in government. This is a problem that can't be attacked by government alone. This isn't a problem that can be solved by military power by itself. And so it seemed to us on the outside, the private sector not only has a role but a responsibility to play actively. United Against Nuclear Iran was an incredible example of how that can be very successful. And so this was really an opportunity to say, not only is it an all instruments of national power on behalf of the government, but it's an opportunity for an effective public-private partnership. The ability to go out and make the point about the horrible human rights abuses and the murder and execution and torture of Muslims by this group that claims that they act in the name of Islam. And so working together with a broad-based coalition, it's a bipartisan effort, it's a nonprofit effort. The idea is to supplement what governments are doing around the world, not just the United States government. We found that there's tremendous support in our Western allies, our allies in the Middle East and the Arab region, and we'll work with everyone who wants to counter this narrative and put an end to the ability to be in the shadows to support it and support this extremist element.
Thank you, Fran. Senator?
Thank you. I can't resist an attempt at humor because you said I need no introduction, and my favorite story about that is a few years ago, I was at a conference where Henry Kissinger was the keynote speaker, and the moderator said, if there's anybody in the world who needs no introduction, it's Henry Kissinger. I give you Dr. Henry Kissinger. And Henry got up and said, I suppose it's true that I don't need an introduction, but I like a good introduction.
Wait, I'll redo it. You don't have enough time.
Not today. To be more appropriately serious, I really feel privileged to be here at the launch of the Counter-Extremism Project, and I thank Mark Wallace for his vision, which has created this new organization, necessary organization. I thank Fran Townsend for her immediate willingness to come to the leadership of it, which is consistent with her remarkable record of public service. I'm honored to be with both of them. I will tell you this personal experience. In the last 24 hours, since it was first reported in the media that I was going to be involved in the Counter-Extremism Project, I've been receiving emails and calls mostly from people I know, but a lot from people I don't know, from around the country and around the world, asking how do I get involved in this. And I think this says a lot, that the Counter-Extremism Project fills a vacuum and responds to a need that people feel to deal with this threat, because they know that their governments alone cannot do it. They feel threatened by extremism and violence, and they want to be part of the response and the solution. I find that I've never quite had the same kind of experience for a 501c3 nonprofit of this kind, and I think it says that we're doing something that's really necessary, and that can be extremely constructive. Mark and Fran have talked about the various attributes of the group. It's not going to be a think tank in the classic sense. It's going to do research, but it's going to be very active to call out the sources of financing for extremism. Some of them as direct and obvious as who's buying the oil from ISIS, from the wells that it seized from Iraq. And some are old stories in the U.S., but I don't know that they're receiving enough attention, is the cigarette smuggling that goes on in so many places in the U.S. actually producing money that ends up funding extremism elsewhere in the world. I think we can play a critically important partnering role with governments, particularly the U.S. Treasury Department, which has gained such extraordinary capability at this kind of breaking the financial support for extremists. The second thing to say is this, and this may seem like an idealistic hope, but why not? And I think it's not idealistic. I think it's practical. Beyond the calling out those who are financially supporting extremism and violence around the world, I think the real hope here is to empower the majority within the Muslim world who are as horrified as we are outside the Muslim world by violent Islamist extremism to stand up and fight back. The extremist groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda are not growing and expanding because of popularity. In fact, as we see in Iraq, hundreds of thousands, maybe more, of Iraqis have become internally displaced refugees because they run from areas that ISIS takes over. So we have the opportunity that we've begun with some of our founding members to really empower the majority in the Muslim world to stand up and fight back and defeat the extremists who really threaten them more than anybody else in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our project will hopefully have a global reach and scope. We'll be making some announcements about offices around the world. We already have our Brussels team up and running, working with the European Commission. We're hoping to have a presence in another presence in Europe, perhaps even in North America and throughout the Middle East, we hope. But with that, we'll take any questions. If you have any questions, just identify yourself and state your affiliation. If you want to direct a question to anybody, we're happy to try to take those questions. And obviously also happy to talk offline as well. Any questions? Please.
For the BBC here, you talked about the allies in the Persian Gulf, the Arab countries, that might be helpful in fighting the funneling of money, but at the same time, we now know that part of the funding for ISIS is coming from rich men in Kuwait and Qatar. It's very hard to see their governments not being aware of this. Do you foresee a shift towards asking or probably blaming those governments? Does the U.S. government need to, can it call these leaders allies and moderates anymore? I mean, is there a conflict there with the alliances that is going on as well as the funding that's coming from these states?
It's a very good question. I think the starting point for our project is to actually try to build that coalition and a collaboration. I think we want to work with every government to the extent that they want to work to try to stop extremism. Something we talked about it earlier. This may be an inflection point in history, a real wake-up call, if you will, where governments have to now pay attention, and traditional allies, friends, and even maybe some more difficult national relations have to come together to deal with the growth of extremism. So our starting point today is that we're hoping to work collaboratively with every government that's willing to do it, but we will hopefully be fearless in calling out those governments or individuals that will support extremist groups. But the best thing that we can do ultimately is work collaboratively and applaud and celebrate governments for doing the right thing. And from this day forward, we're hoping that governments will do that right thing and work collaboratively with us. Did I?
No?
Well done.
Sure.
Other questions? Emily?
From Reuters. Can you describe some of the skills that your employees will use to try to track money for terrorist financing? How will they identify these sources?
Sure. You know, I think that there are two common denominators to research now, and that's elbow grease, or actually keyboard grease, I guess. You know, being really diligent researchers, being young, dynamic people that understand the ways of finding information, and being tireless. And then taking and harnessing that information, applying rigorous legal, financial, and even public affairs analysis to make that intellectually accessible to people. And I think that those skills are uniquely available here in New York and Washington and other places, and we've been fortunate to meet with a lot of young people and a lot of savvy researchers, some of whom are here today even, that are really capable of doing this work. To the extent that you can harness that research, identify those issues, work collaboratively with people, try to understand what they are, maybe call them out if there are difficult actors or perhaps doing the wrong thing. We believe that that is the fundamental, almost journalistic type approach that we try to apply to our work.
And in multiple languages.
Multiple languages, and that's a key thing. I admitted to. Thank you, Fran. You know, every day at 10 o'clock, we have a team that in the United States Eastern Time is translating all the extremist news in Arabic. Our European team is translating the French clips on extremism into English, and it's hitting our inboxes at 10 o'clock, where our American team is compiling the English language clips, all of them together. Now, that's a clip service. but it's really important. From a journalistic perspective, it'll be made available online, because this is an educated audience sitting here before us, but making intellectually accessible to a broad audience what's happening, the dots that are bursting regarding extremism around the world, and connecting those and showing them to a much broader audience what people are talking about, and then hopefully shaping that narrative, because if we can affect both businesses, ideological support, and shaping that narrative over time, we can hopefully try to measure our impact. But connecting those dots is key, and even as we hope, regrettably, one of the reasons why this is getting the attention of so many people is because journalists have lost their lives doing this in horrible ways all over the internet. But to the extent, even as from a journalist perspective, if they have the ability, a journalist that might not have the resources of some of the bigger outlets, being able to have immediate Arabic translations of all the extremist press, we hope that will be a service to journalists, academics, even other governments.
But in terms of connecting the financial dots, that's hard to do, just on the internet. Is there anything that you're going to do to make your team more powerful? Like, are you going to buy any kind of information or surveillance from private companies, or like, how are you going to get to the heart of things that aren't public?
Well, I think you are referring, there are subscription services out there that provide some interesting detailed data, and we were open to doing that, but really it is fundamental research, and there are, as you referenced, subscription services for different types of data. The goal is taking all that data, collating it, and making it into a usable product that we can operationalize in a thoughtful manner to affect what we think is a very grave foreign policy challenge. Please.
Ambassador Walton from the Nation Institute.
I couldn't hear you?
With the Investigative Fund from the Nation Institute. Two questions for you. Why have both the Counter-Extremism Project and United Against Nuclear Iran declined to disclose their sources of funding? And second, could you please explain the relationship between Thomas Kaplan, who served as CEO of one of his companies, and United Against Nuclear Iran and the Counter-Extremism Project?
Sure. As some of you all know who participate in charitable undertakings, the IRS has this provision called 501c3, which every charity is organized in the United States. And there's an election where you can keep donors private. And many, many charities do that. It's not a controversial point. The reason why we've elected to keep donors confidential here is really about safety and security rather than secrecy. Just today, the news, I actually think it was Reuters that broke the news, translating an extremist website, that they were going to target American and French supporters who were opposing the outbursts of extremism. So both as a fundraising technique, frankly, we think keeping our donors secret inspires them to give, and also we have a duty to protect those that want to suit up and challenge that. In terms of my day job, we have a variety of supporters. We do keep them confidential. Tom Kaplan is a well-known philanthropist here in New York, and he's a supporter of various causes, and he's obviously and clearly been a supporter of United Against Nuclear Iran, and we're lucky to have him. Other questions?
Let me just do one follow-up. Senator Lieberman, you mentioned working closely with Treasury, probably using their expertise. What could the relationship between the government and entity that is non-governmental be, especially given the United Against Nuclear Iran experience, that there's a lawsuit going on, and the possibility of they're not telling us what is it that, but the fact that Justice Department getting involved, trying to defend it, has raised a lot of eyebrows about what relationship is there between the two organizations. Are you suggesting that Treasury is going to come in and help the project, or what kind of relationship would there be?
Thanks for asking the question, so I can clarify. No, I'm not. Really, what I wanted to say in mentioning the U.S. Treasury Department is to say thank you. They have developed extraordinary expertise, particularly in applying economic sanctions that have been effective to Iran and now increasingly to other countries like Russia under laws that Congress has passed. So to some extent, they really have set the standard. Their statutory authority to do the same with regard to violent extremist groups like ISIS is less clear. And that's where I think this counter-extremism project and the resources that we're going to build, investigative resources, can supplement what the Treasury Department is doing. It could be that one of the things that this group will recommend, or will just naturally happen, is that Congress pass legislation to make clear that the Treasury Department does have similar authority with regard to extremist terrorist groups to cut their financing that they have now with regard to sanctioned countries like Iran or Russia. But here's a case where I think the counter-extremism project really can lead. It certainly can supplement the government, but it can lead, and maybe the government will follow. But really, most of all, I wanted to say, and I will say it clearly now, that the U.S. Treasury Department has set a high bar and a really extraordinary standard for investigative work that leads to the significant application or threat of application of sanctions that has affected the behavior of other countries in the world. And I think we can do the same. It's going to be harder, but we can do the same with these violent extremist terrorist groups.
And just to follow on that point, governments have indicated, President Obama has indicated recently that this has got to be a coalition and a collaboration across government, academia, NGOs, businesses. So I think that the challenge of this problem, if you will, of extremism is an all hands on deck time. So we've had the privilege of working collaboratively with people all around the world and governments all around the world in a very fair way, and hopefully we'll be able to continue doing that, and we'll play what we think is hopefully a key role in this incredible challenge that we face right now.
Are you planning to partner with Israel, and if so, how?
I can't say that I have a plan to partner with Israel in any way. Certainly they're a really important regional actor in the country. I hoped that one day, Fran and I were talking about before, I hope I'm not getting too far on my skis, but I'd like to say that I'm collaborating with all friends and allies, and maybe even others in the region at some point. So I hope to be able to say that. If there's ever a time where you can say that you would like to have a broad base of coalition and a broad base of support, this is it. And I think that that's possible, and I think you're seeing something happening. I said it earlier, but I think we can feel something happening where there's a level of interest and a level of support that is incredibly broad-based and is not traditional.
Has the Counter-Extremism Project or United Against Nuclear Iran collaborated with U.S. or foreign intelligence agencies?
Well, I'm going to talk to you about the Counter-Extremism Project. This is our first day. We're open to talking to all sorts of governments across the spectrum. However that plays out. We don't have any direct plans to do any of that collaboration. We hope by announcing this, having a serious approach of doing business, serious people involved, that governments will seek to collaborate with us, and we're open to collaborating with a lot of governments. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. It's great, and it's a real honor, so thank you very much, and just stand with these two, so thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fran.